Hey everyone, this is Andy Dowling from the Australian metal band Lord and host of the Anti-Social Podcast. This is my nod to the old school. This podcast series is all about the old school mixtape and compilation, where I get to talk to some of the best in the business about their first introductions to heavy music and what were on those early mixtapes. My nod to the old school is brought to you by Lord's brand new album, Fallen Idols, available right now through Dominus Records and lord.net.au. For us, Fallen Idols was inspired by that old school mixtape. And whether you love thrash metal, power metal, melodic death, black and thrash, or even a bit of AOR, Fallen Idols is the ultimate metal mixtape that throws back to the nostalgic past of when we all first discovered heavy music, but accompanied by a fresh, modern, world-class production. Here's a quick clip from track 5 of Fallen Idols titled Nod to the Old School.
Then now it's a night for reply. Through the heartbreaking ecstasy, strongest surprise. And grow and grow and know who we are inside. And reaching up higher, one look back to see just how far we've come. And into the past, and on to the old school. The feeling that lasts as the journey goes on. So look back at how far we come.
Okay, here we go. Episode 5 of My Nod to the Old School is with Willie Gee. Now, Willie might be the most famous metal guitar tech of all time. I can hear him cringing when he hears this intro. But he's worked with 3 out of the big 4 metal bands, being Anthrax, Megadeth, and Slayer. He's worked with Nevermore, Opeth, King Diamond, and heaps of other bands over the years. Willie is an amazing guy. He has a million stories, and ever since I met him back in 2005 when Dungeon toured with Megadeth throughout Europe, he has just shared so many incredible stories, and I keep telling him over and over again, you need a book, you need a podcast, you need a TV series, you need something to document all of these amazing stories, maybe change the names to protect some of the guilty and innocent in there, but overall he is just a treasure trove of amazing stories, and this chat is no exception. He shares lots of stories growing up, his early mixtapes, and how he got into music and much more. If you enjoy this, also go and check out my other podcast, the Anti-Social Podcast, where I have a longer chat with Willie, where we talk about a lot of his background, getting into being a guitar tech, playing in bands in the 80s, and much more. And that's in episode 109. You can go and check that out over at andysocial.net. You can follow Willie over at Instagram by searching GWillieA, but I'll put everything in the show notes over at lord.net.au as well as andydowling.net. Here we go. This is my chat with Willie Gee.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess everybody has a different take on what exactly a mixtape is. Because back in those days, there were a lot of compilation albums that will be out, from various record labels and stuff. Whether it's things like even something like the Metal Massacre series records, that famous that Metallica was on the first Metal Massacre company like that. Some people will look at those like mixtapes, but and maybe it's the same for you. Over here, a mixtape is basically something that you make personally, of a bunch of different songs. So is that the way you guys do it there in Australia as well?
Yeah, I would say a mixtape is something that you slap together yourself, and then like a compilation, it's like something you'd buy from the store. Yeah.
Yeah. So originally, like when I started doing that stuff, my older sister gave me her old stereo, and it was one of those things. And there's a turntable on the top, and a cassette recorder attached to it, and then it's attached to like an AM/FM radio. But I didn't have a whole lot of money, growing up, sort of that. So I didn't buy a lot of records. I'd wind up waiting for some song that I liked to come on the radio, and I would take that. So I always wound up with these tapes that were just like a whole mashup of whatever I found on the radio that I thought was cool. And at that time, usually it was more album-oriented rock and hard rock stuff because we didn't get a lot of metal, on the radio. At least, these days especially, it would not really be considered so much metal. But I'd have acts. There was an ad called Shooting Star, I believe it was. They had a song that was like kind of like a FM radio hit kind of thing in the Midwest. I'd have that on there, like maybe like April Wine.
Wow.
About the only other thing I could think of that people will still count as metal that would get radio play, at least in my area in the Midwest, would be like maybe Saxon. You'd hear Saxon on the radio sometimes. And then your typical things like Judas Priest or Scorpions and things like that. But, I had like, a lot of the earlier like Billy Squier stuff I'd have. Because I was like really into like kind of like I was into power pop stuff a lot too. So I was a big fan of things like the Knack, and the Midwest was rife with power pop bands. So that stuff got played on the radio a lot, and I'd grown up listening to my older sisters like British Invasion records, or like the Beatles and Kinks, and maybe some Rolling Stones stuff and things like that. So I always had an ear for that kind of pop song structure and catchy chorus riff things. So I would have anything from Billy Squier. There was a band from Chicago that got a record deal called Off Broadway that I liked a lot. That were kind of like a power pop and slightly kind of like punkish kind of edge to them, and I thought they were pretty exciting band at the time. So yeah, my mixtapes would be a bit weird. It'd always be a mashup of that stuff, and sometimes I would make a mixtape that just had like the best cuts. Sometimes I remember once I made a mixtape that was just basically the guitar solos from various albums I had. I didn't even have the songs. I would just edit and play the guitar solos and edit all the guitar solos together. I know somewhere I still have that tape. It's like every guitar solo from Kiss Dynasty. Yeah. Dynasty, you guys say.
Dynasty, yes. I mean, it's especially when you said before about recording off the radio as well. I remember even sort of me growing up, similar sort of scenario where you didn't have the money to go to a store and buy something, so you get the old dub cassette and try to capture a song on the radio. But I'm sure it'd be the same for you, where you'd try to record a song, but you'd miss the start of it or you'd miss the end of the song. So you'd have these weird versions.
Like if you listen to like the top 40 stations or something like that, but that would happen a lot. But the main thing about those stations that I hated is that if the DJ wasn't speaking over the start of the song, they would be saying something over the end of it. And that would drive me crazy. But the really cool, Chicago had two great like album-oriented hard rock stations in those days, and they would have these things like album sides weekends, and they would play like, we're going to play side 2 of Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, and they'd play, side 1 of Screaming for Vengeance, or, Women and Children First in its entirety or something like that. And there'd be no commercials. The DJ wouldn't talk. So, basically, I would wait around and tape stuff like on the weekend, because then I'd be out of school, whatever, anyway. But if there were some songs that I was really interested in, I'd just, I'd be doing my homework or whatever, and I'd sit by the radio with the thing, on record, but paused. So all I had to do was like hit the pause button and it would start taping, so I could get as much of the song as possible. So sometimes maybe you'd have to tape a song 2 or 3 times to make sure you had, all the sections of it before some stupid DJ started saying something.
I mean, it's pretty cool the way that the DJs are doing it, because it's almost like encouraging, bootlegging across the city, just to give everyone a heads up. Hey, heads up! I'm going to play half this record, so get your tape decks ready if you want to record your own versions of it. Yeah,
and it was a big thing. The album size weekends, they call them. And like the whole weekend, starting Friday through Sunday, they would play like side 1 of this album, side 2 of this album. They would tell you what album they're going to play, so you had plenty of time to. But of course, in those days, everybody still would go out and buy the record and stuff, because who wants, you want to, if you're broke like me, then that's what you had till you could, get the album. But in those days, the goal was to have the record, like people used to like sort their weed out or chop lines out on their covers or whatever, so you needed. They can't do that with the cassette for the radio.
Where did you listen to your mixtapes? Was it just at home, or did you have like a Walkman or like a boombox or something like that you listened to it?
Well, usually it was at home. I didn't get a Walkman until I think it was my senior year of high school. So I was maybe 16 years old, maybe 16 or 17.
Was it a game
And
changer?
that's when what's that? I'm sorry?
Was that a game changer for you when you had the Walkman?
Yeah, not only that, because my first Walkman was a rare recording Walkman.
Ooh.
And it had a radio built into it, so I could literally walk around with a tape in my Walkman, and if I heard something in the radio that I liked, I could record it right there on the spot.
Nice.
It wasn't cheap either. And that was like around 1984-ish or somewhere around there, and I think it cost like $150. And that was a lot of money back in those days. That's almost as much as I paid for my first decent guitar. Wow. So it'll tell you.
And
yeah,
so,
I had that for a while. Some idiot I worked with dropped it and broke it.
Oh.
So much for that idea.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it earlier on, but do you still have these early mixtapes?
I know for a fact I have some of them. I boxed some things away, while I was cleaning things, because right now I don't have a functional cassette player. So I put some cassettes away, and I know I have all of those tapes. I was actually trying to find some of them when you talked to me about doing this, so I could, see maybe if I could borrow one from someone, or thought maybe my buddy might have someone somewhere, and I could go back and listen to some of the stuff. But I could not find the tapes. So now that's going to be another thing that's going to be in the back of my mind, bugging me. Like, where are those tapes? I remember one for a fact. I caught Jimi Hendrix, "Hey Joe," like from the beginning somehow. And at the end of the song, when he's like kind of doing the ad-lib thing, it was like, goodbye, everybody. He's saying all that stuff, during the outro. You hear the DJ voice goes, "Goodbye, Jimmy." Then he starts talking, and then I just stopped it. I remember this guy just ruined it.
I think this is where a lot of that deep-seated hate comes from. It's from your childhood, just trying to dub music off the radio.
Well, no. I think that, I've got more pleasant memories from radio than, believe me, I've been placed with enough unsavory occurrences in life to like fuel up all my vitriol and bile and hatred than radio DJs.
That's just the small stuff.
Yes, it's the little things that get you. It's like, I went and saw this. There was a play that was in Toronto, and they did it in Chicago, called Four Chords and a Gun. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
It's basically, well, are you aware of like the Ramones? I think it was their fourth album, maybe, or was it their fifth album? Phil Spector, legendary 60s pop. He produced that album.
Okay.
And the play is about what the band was going through with Phil Spector as they were recording that album, End of the Century, and about their interpersonal relationships at the time. Because I guess at one point, Joey Ramone was dating this girl who wound up leaving him for Johnny. And the play was about all this stuff. And the play wasn't really one of the annoying things. I was amused by that. I thought that was good. But then afterwards, 4 totally unknown musicians come out with some gear, and they start playing Ramone songs. And I'm like, and it was like they put some guys. It's like the theater was across from this big shopping center, and it's like they had somebody go through the mall and stop random people and asked if they knew how to play an instrument, and then maybe gave them a day or two and some songs and says, "Can you learn these songs?" Because they were doing some very unfaithful renditions of these Ramone songs, and each one they went into, I was just becoming more and more upset. I'm like, well, how could you do this play about this album that is a very important piece of work in the career of this like legendary band, and then have these guys come up and just totally cock up the whole thing? The drummer they had looked like they got him from like, he just walked out from his church service gospel band, session where he plays drums for his church or something. At one point, he was like doing like rolls, and I caught him doing a couple of stick twirls. The guitar player wasn't like down picking the chords. He was like strumming them. It's like somebody's like, yeah, they're like a punk rock band. Like, the punk rocks, they just kind of like, hacksaw the guitar. Let me just do that. And I'm like, this is everything they did was making me mad.
I like how you can just quickly reach back into the years gone by and just find things very quickly. That you just
Yeah, there's something not quite right with me, Mr. Dowling. I might have like I'm on. You know, they say like, you know, they're on the what's it they say when
well,
I'm on the spectrum.
on the
I got my
spectrum.
foot on some part of the spectrum.
Okay.
Something's not right.
Well, I don't know, Willie. I think that's what we like about you. So, yeah, we'll. For you, I guess it's a constant battle, but for the rest of us, it's mildly entertaining. And as long as you're here to share the stories, then I think that's a good thing for the rest of us.
Well, I don't know. Some people don't seem to be exactly amused by it, but legend has it that I have a lot of stories.
Oh, we're
I
not.
think some people are more amused by them than others are.
Oh, well, I might have to just develop my own podcast series just to talk about your stories, and you can just be the co-host of that, and we'll just go through your back catalogue of stories over the decades, and we'll start digging in.
I have to see if I can really wrap my head around flash animation or something like that, and we'll keep like the voices on, but I'll like animate it with like really crude drawings of what's going on. Just to...
Leave that with me. I'll the cogs are turning. Well, Willie, I mean, the last thing I was going to ask as well with this, and I think it's interesting because a lot of our new album is going to be a bit of a nostalgic trip. It's sort of going back into a time where people didn't care as much about all these, you know, million different subgenres of music, and people being a bit of an elitist about the type of music they listen to. Is a bit more of a case of you liked heavy music, you liked heavy guitars, you liked hooks, and so when you're growing up, you were just trying to find as many songs that you liked, and you weren't really aware of all the different genres at that time. But I guess that last question is, you know, what was happening at that point in time of your life, and was it a case of you just sort of really enjoying music and not really sort of worrying about the differences of genres and styles? It was more of a case of if it's got loud guitars, that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, you know, more or less though, even still to this day, that at the end of the day, that's kind of what matters to me. But at that point, I was starting to read a lot of music magazines. Before, it was more comic books and anything that had Kiss in it. And then I started, you know, getting interested in other bands. And the best way for me to find out about some of them were reading these magazines. And I was, you know, getting to teen years, and my taste in things were getting progressively heavier because it seemed like the heavier bands had more, basically, whether it was more intricate or not, they had more guitar going on. You know, the things that were going on was more interesting for me. You know, just, you know, things were a little faster, a little more aggressive. You know, the songwriting stuff was a little bit more adventuresome. Is that a real word?
Oh yeah,
I just made up a word.
That'll do.
There was more of a sense, you know, I didn't feel like anyone was really holding back as much as there was some band trying to write, you know, something that they could get on the radio. It was like some of these bands, like something like Iron Maiden, you know, it didn't sound like they were writing anything to get on the radio. So I was really getting interested in a lot of the stuff, and that was like around the time where, you know, maybe a lot of these new wave of British heavy metal bands were coming around, and I just started, you know, I knew that something was going on. People say, you know, there was a certain energy at that time, like, you know, there was kind of a scene starting up. I just grew to realize there were more bands that I was aware, you know, than I was aware of, that, you know, weren't getting radio play. And, you know, there's, you know, a whole group of bands, or maybe, you know, on the other side of the ocean, you know, that, you know, and there was like a lot of them, and I just wanted to find out more about what was going on. But I had very little access to those bands. I mean, there was bands for years where I knew about them. I had no idea what they sounded like. And here's a funny story. The first time I saw the Kill 'Em All album, I didn't buy it because I thought they looked kind of like stoner hippie-ish kind of on the back of it. And I was looking for, things that are a little bit more glossy, a little, more upbeat, and things like the first thrash album that I got was Anthrax and Metal, and it didn't have a picture of the band or anything on it, but the cover really said metal. When Kill 'Em All came out, I couldn't make out what exactly was on the cover, and I look at the picture of the band on the back, and they got like this really cheesy mustaches and headbands tied on, and this guy's got acne, I'm like, these guys, they sound like Saint Vitus or something. What is it? I looked at them and it looked like guys I knew who were into stuff like Black Sabbath. They only and not even Dio Sabbath. Like they only listen to Ozzy Sabbath. I would run into these guys that looked like that, and all they wanted to do was smoke pot and listen to Ozzy era Sabbath, and that kind of thing. And it's like I don't think this is my thing.
But they were wearing denim jackets in that photo, so that must have appealed to you a little bit.
Well, it's not bad. Well, Kirk had a leather on, but it's like it was just between the headband, the denim jackets, and the cheesy mustache, and the acne, and I was like, what is going on with these dudes? It's like I was thinking that like a real metal band looks like Accept or something, leathered out and. But I was like 16, 17, going in 18 at the time. And I'm like, I wasn't really into that thrash scene thing. I was just, starting to discover a lot of these bands. And I was still really into Judas Priest. And I'm looking at, I'm like, who are these kids?
It definitely would have been different at the time.
Yeah, I didn't catch on to Metallica until after they came through on a tour opening for Wasp.
Wow.
And by that time, I think Ride the Lightning had been released, or was about to be released, or it was out already, or something. I can't remember exactly on my timeline frame when it was, but then I understood. With Kill 'Em All, I hadn't heard it. I just picked the album and looked at it. In those days, a lot of times that the album cover did a lot as far as selling that record went. And that's the other good thing about those compilations, because they would put all these various bands on there, and if you heard something you like, you could go investigate, that band's album, rather than, especially when you don't have a lot of money. It's like, I'm going to drop, money on an album, and this might be the only record I'm going to get that month, so it's got to be something that is going to, that I'm going to play incessantly for like a month, because it's the only thing I'm going to get for a month.
It's a little way of like a sampler in a way, just to sort of give you a taste of what's out there, and just helps you sort of make a better decision. Because I mean, those records are not cheap. So as you said, you've only got an opportunity to buy maybe one, and you've got to make sure you make the right decision.
At the time, I went to university, and I found places that used record stores off campus. That was my saving grace. The used record.
Save a hell of a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I remember they had the Motorhead No Remorse cassette compilation, and like the vinyl had like a leather sleeve, and the cassette came in a leather sleeve as well, and that would double as like you could use it as a cigarette case. So you could buy a box like Marlboros and slide it into the leather bound Motorhead dual cassette thing they sell for the No Remorse album. That was the thing. I didn't smoke, so I didn't get that, but I thought that was cool.
Multi-purpose, I love it. A bit of stellar marketing there.
Yeah, I wonder how many people remember that.
I didn't even know that happened. I mean, mind you, I won't tell you how old I was back then, but
Well, you were even born in 1984.
I was actually in 1984. I was born, so there you go.
Oh.
So depending on the time of year, I may or may not have existed, but or it may have just been a thought. But we'll leave it at that.
In June, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Well, June 8th was mine. So there you go.
So now my mission is going to be at some point as a birthday gift, I have to find that leather bound edition of No Remorse and give it to you.
Oh,
damn it! Now I got another goose chase to go on.
Now I've got to take up smoking.
No, we can put like candy cigarettes or something in there.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I can do that. I can definitely deal with that.
To learn more about our guest, check out the show notes over at andydowling.net as well as lord.net.au, where you can hear our brand new album, Fallen Idols. Cheers for listening, and this has been my nod to the old school. Larry, please.